Okay, so peace and blessings. It's your brother Sare, back with another one. Peace to the gods, man. Peace to the true and living. Who's the true and living? If you've been following along with these videos, kind of staying up with some of the stuff we've been discussing, you are the true and living. Nice to meet you. I ain't got to yell at the camera today, man. I got an actual microphone, man. So we can kind of keep it kind of mellow and chill. Peace to the ancestors, you know what I mean? Thankful for those shoulders to stand on, to be able to kind of walk us into some of this material. Thankful for their sacrifices and them doing certain levels of work that I didn't have to do. I could just build on top of some of the stuff that's already laid down by the great ones who came before us. So we must always remember that you know, we represent, in a lot of cases, we represent, you know, a community, and a lot of our individual contributions, like me personally, I don't feel like anything I have to say is any more or less important than the next person or whatever, any other ones of my peers or whatever. I'm just providing a little bit of contrast. I'm just trying to hold down my section, you know what I mean? This is just a piece of the puzzle, a quite intriguing piece of the puzzle, to say the least, as you can see, but a piece of the puzzle nonetheless, and just my contribution to the community at large. You see what I'm saying? So shout out to all my peers and all the other people out there doing great works on the various different levels. Everybody's not supposed to do the same thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm speaking about certain things or whatever. That's a part of, you know, my contribution. Somebody else might do something different that doesn't involve speaking in front of a microphone or something like that. So don't cheapen your contribution because it ain't what this person is doing or what that person may be doing. We all have our own individual strengths and weaknesses. So you know, we all contribute or can potentially contribute to the whole in various different ways. So you know what I mean? So just food for thought. Yeah, man, peace to the true and living. Let's get into this. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop. We're going to still keep it going in this whole thought experiment, this whole little series that we've been doing as far as the electric soul. Like we said, pretty much the first person in modern time to really come with a framework that involved the soul being an electrical phenomenon was the founder of the Rosicrucians in the West, Pascal Beverly Randolph, back in the mid 1800s. In our kind of approach to it, we're utilizing Tesla's particle-less physics that is heavily dependent upon the ether. Right, so that's kind of the framework. Tesla did not live at the same time that Randolph lived, so we're kind of taking a different approach to it. We're also taking the approach, and we're gonna kind of revisit some of this. Within this is another one you may want to have to bring your attention span to. You see what I'm saying? But you will not be disappointed. We go into Robert Becker's stuff, Robert Becker's research. Robert Becker was the scientist involved with the study of regeneration of human tissue for the military and everything like that. You go into some of his stuff, and he talks about the body being electrical, the proteins being like semiconductors or basically batteries, the cell being like a semiconductor, or for our purposes, a temporary battery and everything like that conducts charge. We get into Tesla's framework or whatever, and it's more of a situation with resonance because he doesn't deal with the electron in his framework. So basically, we're still running off the premise that basically the soul is an electrical phenomenon. It's basically on a spiritual etheric server, to use that analogy, and you're the physical hardware. So you can break your phone 1,000,000 times and go get another phone and still download everything off of the server and back up as long as your phone is backed up. That's like an analogy for the soul and the physical human being and everything like that. But with that, you interacting with the soul on a day-to-day basis, and there is a feedback loop between you and the soul on a physical side, facilitated by the fascia, bone, the piezoelectric tissues in the body, the melanin, and the DNA of the person, specifically the mitochondrial DNA, which is the powerhouse of the cell, the mitochondria. You see what I'm saying? So there's a feedback loop between you and the blueprint or soul, as it were. Loss of that feedback loop, degradation of the DNA or whatever case may be, and loss of contact with that feedback loop. We talked about that's what causes us to physically age or what have you. Now, so we're going to get into this. The feedback loop would suggest that karma is just a part of the feedback loop. The everyday situations in our lives, the people that we meet, the things that we go through, the everyday challenges that we go through in our day-to-day lives is a part of the feedback loop. We've been talking about this for damn near 6 years at this point. It's the same stuff that we were dealing with the experiential material and self-to-self. There are 3 portions of True Master, this series: self-to-self, which is heavily reliant on the experiential; self-to-others, which is kind of me filtering a martial art through the experiential; and this stuff, others to self. I never really kind of talked about others to self. This is these more science heavy videos that we making as of late. These are more others to self. This is some of that material I just don't talk about for this very reason, because it's so kind of heavy, wordy, nerdy, dense, detailed, all that stuff like that. But we got time today. So again, there's a feedback loop between the soul or blueprint and the physical individual. So almost like if you ever remember grandmama talking about, she talking to Jesus and grandma kind of dealing with her personal thing or whatever. Oh, baby, I'm just talking to Jesus. Jesus, don't let this happen. Basically, from this interpretation, she would have actually been consciously acknowledging this particular feedback loop. You see what I'm saying? If that makes any particular sense. So we talked about on a previous video when we were talking about spiritual attainment. We were talking about the left and the right hand paths. We were talking about basically the microwave way, for lack of a better way of putting it, or the fast track way, the high voltage, more dangerous path, which is the left hand path, that would give you faster results in a shorter amount of time, but it's more risky and requires more control. You see what I'm saying? Which deals with more heterodox rituals, right? More against the grain type of stuff that could be considered taboos. Those things used as elements to shock the system into a higher level of voltage and everything like that, but it's controlled ritualistically. So that's one aspect of it. That's one thing. And then we were dealing with what we would call the right hand path or whatever, which is more slow and steady. It's a lower voltage, more resistance way. Resistance meaning more rituals, more checks and balances and stuff like that. So it's a slow and steady way that may take you years and years to attain spiritual attainment or what have you. However, it's more guaranteed and it's more safer. You see what I'm saying? That's like going to church. That's like going to the mosque or whatever case may be. Most of your monotheistic religions are based on what we would call or consider the right hand path. We liken that in previous videos to the influence of the Twa, who basically started the Osirian priesthood, and all the religions and all the things that kind of come up out of that or whatever. This more measured and slow and steady type of spiritual path and everything like that, right? So in this section, what we're going to do, we're going to examine the various different paths or ways of voltage multiplication or charge amplification in the human being. You see what I'm saying? Because we already established that the soul is electrical in this model, and there's a feedback loop between the spiritual server, so to speak, or another phase of the electricity, where outside of the physical, where the electrical phenomena, which we call the blueprint or the soul, resides and everything like that. And there is a feedback loop back to a lower voltage phase of the physical manifestation where we are, and what we call religious practice and everything like that, whether it be on an individual level, meditating, chanting, and things like that, whether it be on a dual level with a singular partner, like some sort of tantra or sex magic or something of that nature, or whether it be as a collective, as far as a community of people, whether it be facilitated by a culture, let's say like a village with a certain culture that worships a particular set of deities or something like that. They have symbolism all over the place or whatever, and you walk in there and you're immersed in the symbolism or whatever case may be, and the whole community participates in that. The type of field that generates and creates. You see what I'm saying? We're just going to contrast those various different models. You see what I'm saying in this? Okay, so let's kind of get into this. I know I ran my mouth a little bit on that one. So let's kind of get into this, right? So, and yeah, I always got the cup. Hey, I know y'all be like, sometimes I know we be on this playlist on this others the self, and they get kind of heavy with the words, and I know y'all be like, man, what is he sipping in that cup? I promise you it's nothing crazy, because I need maximum sobriety to spit this, to spit like this. If anything, it may be you know, some herbs or something like that, some caffeine if anything, you know, but nothing crazy. Okay, all right, so here we go. Foundational framework, right? The Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, BAFL, right? Defining energetic potential, human voltage. So the human voltage is likened unto energetic potential. We also want to liken voltage. When we hear the word voltage, we want to liken that to pressure. So if we would contrast this with, let's say, hydrodynamics or something like that, we will contrast voltage with pressure. So defining energetic potential, human voltage, and etheric field, right? The concept of human voltage is advanced spiritual physics is interpreted not merely as localized cellular membrane potential. Localized cellular membrane potential. Remember, the cellular membrane conducts electricity and everything like that. But as the demonstrable high-coherence electromagnetic field generated and stabilized by the human organism as a whole, right? So when we say human voltage, we're not just talking about cellular voltage. Cellular voltage ties into, for all my people who follow Dr. Sebi's school of thought, voltage, as we discussed before, also Jerry Tennett's school of thought, voltage ties into alkalinity and acidity in the body. So that's kind of like that correlation or whatever when we kind of bring it more into a chemical perspective. When we get into a more of an electrical perspective, we're dealing with voltage. So high coherence electromagnetic field generated and stabilized by the human organism. This measurable potential correlates directly with highly ordered physiological states, okay? Specifically, phase locked. Phase locked means you're in a particular state. Remember how we talked about human beings are in trance 100% of the time. Phase lock means like how we talked about if Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, all that are various phases of energy, hypothetically or whatever. Being phase locked would be set in Leo and you stuck in Leo and you're not moving for whatever reason. That's an example of phase lock. So specifically, phase locked oscillatory function, stand in one frequency, and high coherence in heart rate variability. When we were talking about the field that the heart generates, we were talking about heart rate variability. Breathing, it's associated with breathing. The term etheric field describes a resultant bio-electromagnetic field which acts as the energetic signature of the individual's integrated, right, physiological and conscious state. So it's a combination between your physiological state, you see what I'm saying, your state of health and everything like that, and your conscious state, your psychological state. Now, we talked about on previous videos about how illnesses in the body are an expression of psychological trauma, or can be, all right? or they're linked to psychological trauma. We were talking about acausal connections. All right, so we're gonna keep on going. The Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, BAFL, constitutes the initiative mechanism governing this process. The Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, the feedback loop that we're talking about, from the soul blueprint to the individual organism, constitutes the iterative mechanism governing this process, right? It describes how conscious intention and finely tuned physiological states, most notably heart-brain coherence, generate a stable, measurable electromagnetic field. This generated etheric field then feeds back your field. Remember, we were saying if the field is grass, then melanin would be the soil that the grass is planted in, right? So this field then feeds back informational data to the physiological substrate, right? Reinforcing or destabilizing the foundational informational structure, herein termed the soul blueprint. So this basically is saying the stuff that you do, or whatever case may be, it affects the original blueprint. I think we've said that on previous videos. So the efficacy of this feedback mechanism hinges upon optimal regulation of the autonomic nervous system, right? The vagus nerve is identified as the critical bidirectional information highway linking the body, particularly heart and gut, because the heart has a nervous system. The heart has its own nervous system associated with it. The gut has its own brain and nervous system associated with it, and the brain has a portion of the nervous system associated with it as well. So you know, they have their own things going on. Okay, particularly the heart and gut to the brain. All right, when it talks about the vagus nerve, you're going to hear, and we're going to kind of go in a little bit more in detail on the vagus nerve in just a second. When we talk about the vagus nerve is stimulated by breathing. Breathing is the the one practice you can do that's both conscious and subconscious, subconscious and unconscious at the same time. If you're not thinking about it, you're not going to stop breathing. If you are thinking about it, you can control your breathing. So it's that type of party. The vagus nerve is identified as the critical bidirectional information gateway linking the body, particularly the heart and gut, to the brain. A vagal tone, representing the baseline activity of the parasympathetic system, fundamentally dictates the resting stability and efficacy of the bioetheric feedback loop. All right, so that's going into the importance of the vagus nerve when we get into the bioetheric feedback loop. And I know this is a little bit wordy and nerdy, but we're gonna get into the punchline as we always do. When we start examining the various different models. Okay, just to put this on wax, if you fast forward, we're gonna get into the various different models, but you know how we do, we just seasoning it up real quick. So let me continue to kind of marinate this thing. Let me see here. Real quick, let's marinate this a little bit more. Okay, so I was trying to get the AI to elaborate on this a little bit more, right? Is the parasympathetic nervous system different from the analog nervous system that Robert O. Becker described in his research? Because remember, we're not dealing with the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, right? We're dealing with the analog nervous system that operates off direct current that Robert O. Becker was talking about, right? So let's see, how does that tie into the vagus nerve? Now I know we kind of getting a little bit deeper into this or whatever. You might have to go back to some of the previous videos because we're building on some of the stuff we've been talking about. Okay, so the distinction between Robert O. Becker's concept of the analog nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, PNS, is fundamental to the bioetheric feedback loop framework. They are not the same. So again, the analog nervous system that we've been talking about this whole time, or whatever case may be, that's the third iteration of the nervous system, right? Okay, so they're not the same. Rather, they represent two distinct yet interacting electrical control systems within the body. Two distinct yet interacting. So they interact with one another, but they're very distinct from one another. The parasympathetic nervous system is a well-established component of the classical, fast-acting, chemical, electrical nervous system, right? Becker's analog nervous system, in contrast, is proposed as a separate, slower, direct current system responsible for broader integration and structural control. So they do two totally different things. Here is an analysis of the two systems through the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop framework. Becker's analog nervous system, the DC control system. Becker's research focused on the concept of a separate operational system based on extraneural, outside of the brain, outside of the neurons, DC electrical currents that function to integrate brain activity. This system is considered analog because it operates via slow DC current fields, fundamentally different from the rapid pulse-based signaling of neurons. Action potential. Function in regeneration. Becker's pioneering work demonstrated that weak low voltage direct current stimulation could induce processes like cellular dedifferentiation. We talked about that. In limb regeneration, we talked about that, how electrical fields are strong at the site where lizards and newts and things of that nature regenerate their limbs. That capability is latent within us as mammals and everything like that. However, it can be stimulated with the use of electrical fields. Okay, in normally non-regenerating, so dedifferentiation and limb regeneration in non-regenerating species. All right, this evidence suggests the DC system carries the morphogenic authority, the sole blueprint necessary to maintain and store the body and restore the body's physical structure. The integrating role. The analog system is hypothesized to serve as a critical integrating function across the cerebral nervous system, managing the overall state of the body beyond the massive interconnectivity of individual neurons. Proposed pathway, perennial sheath. While not explicitly stated to be the analog nervous system in the provided research, the fascia, the concept of the perennial sheath aligned with the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop's model of a widespread electrically conductive network that carries the slower structural DCF signals associated with the biofield, right? So that's what Becker is talking about. And I know we wordy and nerdy with this, but just bear with me. It's gonna get greater later. We gotta just season the pot. You know, in part two, I know I got you covered, so you know how that goes. So the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, the PNS, the vagal regulator, right? The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest branch of the autonomic nervous system, ANS. Its function is to return the body to a stable homeostasis state. Functional definition. The parasympathetic nervous system is largely responsible for involuntary functions such as heart rate reduction, regulation of the digestive tract, and vessel dilation. Vessel dilation. The vagus nerve, the key component of the parasympathetic nervous system, relevant to the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, is the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve. The vagus nerve acts as a bidirectional information highway between the brain and major organs like the heart and gut. A bidirectional information highway between the brain and major organs like the heart and gut. So basically, these major three centers in the body that kind of correlate with the Dantian of Taoist tradition and everything like that, these major three areas that have a large collection of nerve ganglia and basically their own section of the nervous system for each one. Each one is really said to have a brain of their own and everything like that, and the vagus nerve being the pathway, information pathway between those three, basically the three Dantian as it were. So that's the importance, the relevance of the vagus nerve, and it's associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's just kind of giving you a little bit of contrast in that. Contrast analog DC system versus parasympathetic AC/DC analogy. In some of the PNS via the vagus nerve is the fast-acting regulator that consciously or unconsciously minimizes the resistance, ego, impedance, and we're going to get into that, how the ego is impedance. It's a part of the filter that separates you from the fullness of the ether or what have you. I'm not saying it as if that's a bad thing, but I'm just saying that as if that's a thing. Okay, so that minimizes resistance in the system, optimizing the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop for high performance. Becker's analog nervous system is the structural DC framework that provides the stable blueprint against which the parasympathetic nervous system and other high-frequency systems operate. The efficacy of the parasympathetic nervous system demonstrates the clarity and stability of the energetic flow, right? But the analog system demonstrates the underlying form and potential for regeneration. So when in a previous video, we talked about the cells being like living batteries and everything like that, and every cell has the potential to go back to being a stem cell and everything like that, and transform into some other alternative cell or what have you. If it starts out a liver cell, it can become a kidney cell by the intermediary of a stem cell, by becoming a stem cell, then becoming a different type of cell or whatever. So the form and function of something and its capability to regenerate itself, we were associating that with its charge, because we were saying cells were like capacitors or batteries. In Becker's work, he talks about them as being semiconductors. You see what I'm saying? So that's its form and function is a part of the charge or the program associated with it. The analog system is associated with things of that nature or whatever. The parasympathetic nervous system and the vagus nerve and all that or whatever, that's once the form and function has been established, that's like a transport system that delivers messages through the already established thing. So kind of like that's the difference between those two nervous systems. Okay, so the vagus nerve and the increase in human voltage. The increase in human voltage modeled in the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop as the stability and coherence of the body's electromagnetic field. We talked about the human biofield before. We already talked about that. That is an actual medical term. So the electromagnetic field is intrinsically linked to the function and optimization of the vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve. All right, so let's read that again. The increase in human voltage modeled in the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop as the stability and coherence of the body's human biofield, basically. It is intrinsically linked to the function and optimization of the vagus nerve, right? The transportation highway between these various energy centers. You see what I'm saying? Whether it be the brain, the heart, the gut, these various centers of the body with a large amount of nerve ganglia and everything like that. Okay, the primary function of the vagus nerve is the main peripheral neural structure of the parasympathetic nervous system is to manage physiological homeostasis, particularly reflex pathways that regulate cardiac function, heavily tied into the heart. The levels of sustained baseline parasympathetic activity exerted by this nerve is quantified as vagal tone, is what it's called. The correlation between the vagus nerve and increased human voltage is defined by its role as an impedance regulator, a resistance regulator. It regulates the flow of information. You see what I'm saying? Minimizing resistance. Spiritual and conscious practices like deep breathing and meditation act as an internal biofeedback system to enhance vagal tone, which is correlated with increased heart rate variability dynamics. This enhancement is the physiological mechanism for reducing internal noise or stress, modeled as ego impedance in the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, right? Ego impedance. So anytime we see the word impedance, it's resistance. It's the clog in the drain. You see what I'm saying? Okay, maximizing coherence by stabilizing the cardiac rhythm, all right? The frequency in which your heart beats, promoting parasympathetic dominance. The vagus nerve neurologically clears the channels for stable, high voltage, high pressure potential to manifest and be retained within the system. Essentially, a high, stable vagal tone creates an efficient, low resistance low resistance pathway, a easy flow for the information and energy of the vagus nerve to flow through, for the stable etheric potential, the soul blueprint to feed back into the physiological system without dissipation, right? Okay, just trying to get through this thing about the vagus nerve. Like I told you, you might want to bring your attention span to this one, but it's going to get good later when we get into the actual systems, and the individual one, the dual one, and the community one, so we can kind of see what that actually looks like as far as a field is concerned. So the function in voltage generation, the vagus nerve's function as it pertains to high voltage is to ensure the coherence required for the field to stabilize at a higher potential. The coherence required for the field to stabilize at a higher potential. Now, we talked about this when we were examining the left and the right hand path potential, as well as antinomialism. We talked about the difference between antinomialism and the left hand path was that the left hand path does have you doing heterodox or against the grain or taboo type acts or what have you for the shock value of it, or whatever case may be, to kind of shock the system for the value of the high voltage and everything like that. But we also talked about how it's contained ritualistically, so it's like a one and done thing there, as opposed to the antinomian perspective, where they're trying to change laws to make the taboo just a normal thing in society or whatever case may be. It's an uncontrolled, unchecked aspect of using chaotic energies or whatever. You see what I'm saying? So that's the coherence aspect of it. So to increase the voltage, but to have it under controlled circumstances, that's one thing. But to increase the voltage and to have it under uncontrolled circumstances with a structure that cannot facilitate the higher voltage or whatever case may be, that creates a breakdown in the system. So techniques that intentionally modulate the vagus nerve function as deliberate vagus nerve stimulation induce the state of heart-brain coherence. Bio electromagnetic amplification, synchronous and coherent neuronal firing amplifies the brain's electromagnetic field by controlling the primary autonomic functions of the heart, the body's most powerful electrical generator. The vagus nerve ensures that the brain and body systems are synchronized. The vagus nerve ensures that the body and brain systems are synchronized. This synchronization, aka coherence, is the prerequisite state for a massive, organized bioelectromagnetic field, the human voltage. All right, so basically bodily coherence between the body, the brain, and all of its systems and everything like that would constitute a high level of higher voltage and everything. That's the prerequisite for high voltage to be generated and sustained, and because it's not just about generating it, because the shock of generating it can kill you or make you have a stroke or something like that. It's about having a suitable vessel that can maintain a certain quality of energy once it has been attained. So as opposed to being dissipated in incoherent noise. Okay, common human experiences involving vagus nerve stimulation, conscious and unconscious activities that promote calmness as a sense of connection or physical shock are known to activate and stimulate the vagus nerve, increasing vagal tone and engaging in the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, diaphragmic breathing, at least meditation and mindfulness, exposure to cold. If y'all ever heard of the Iceman, Wim Hof, you see what I'm saying? You know, that's interesting. He has a whole method where he uses the Tibetan practice of tumo. You see what I'm saying? The fire, cultivating fire energy in the belly and everything like that, which allows him to swim in icy water or stay submerged in icy water for extended amounts of time. So that's a tangible example of that, the experience of awe or wonderment or what have you. Okay, like something to shock your system, or basically some sort of enduring pattern or whatever case may be. So let's kind of let's see here. Okay, so we talked about, y'all bear with me, I'm still trying to prep the pump. So the other question I asked the AI in the context, in this context, will voltage be the same as pressure or coherence? Okay, so let's see here. Voltage versus coherence, the difference between state and measure. Okay. In the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop framework, coherence describes the fundamental state of the system. Coherence is the fundamental state of the system at large. Voltage is the measurable energetic capacity that results from the state, or what have you. So a coherent system will give you higher voltage, basically what he's saying. Coherence of the system, or what have you, is the baseline or the prerequisite for attaining higher voltage. Okay, so that's what you got to start off with. The state, coherence. Coherence refers to the degree of energetic synchronization and the alignment within the body's primary electrical system, specifically the phase locking. We said phase locking, we already described that, is neurological and cardiac rhythms, heart rate, heart-brain coherence. We talked about that in our video about the science of the heart. Coherence is a qualitative state. It dictates the overall efficacy and integrity of the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop circuit. High coherence equals low impedance or low resistance. High coherence, as far as all of the body systems functioning synchronistically, equals low impedance or low resistance. You see what I'm saying? The drain is not clogged. When the system achieves high coherence, internal resistance or ego impedance. So the ego is associated with this high coherent state, or the lack of the ego is associated with this high coherent state. As we're going to see in other videos and everything like that, when we really get into the subject object divide and all of that and everything like that, when we start getting into the ego, what have you, the ego is impedance, and it's a manifestation of the filter that separates you from the ether at large, or what's perceived as the blueprint of the true self. Okay, so voltage or human voltage is used as a metaphor for the measurable, stable potential difference that the body can maintain and utilize. Voltage is a quantitative measure. It is the stable amplitude of the electromagnetic field function. Sustained high voltage capacity, such as that achieved by John Chang. John Chang is the Magus of Java. That's a whole book about that, the various things he could do as far as projecting electric current outside of his body, is only possible when the underlying coherence is maximal. So even the things that he's able to do in that book is saying that the baseline state for that even to be possible before anything else is a level of bodily coherence. You cannot sustain high voltage if the system is incoherent, right? As the energy will dissipate immediately as internal noise or heat, all right, or it'll kill you. However, coherence is the perfect tuning of a high performance engine where every piston fires precisely in sync. Voltage is the maximum output horsepower or speed that the perfectly tuned engine can sustain without shaking itself apart, all right? So that's kind of, just kind of getting into that. I know that was a kind of a bit of a lengthy little piece right there, but just kind of trying to lay that down when we go a little bit further. Let me see here. Beyond the neural path, fascial melanin network as primary electrical roadways. I think we talked about that on previous videos. No need to rehash that. Melanin and biocharge amplification. Melanin is one of the few macro molecules exhibiting electrical and photoconductivity in the solid state. Let's see here. 1 second here. Melanin may function as a biotransformer, facilitating energy conversion or storage, potentially amplifying ambient light or subtle bioelectrical signals within the body's expansive energy grid. Okay, coherence, memory, and the soul blueprint. The soul blueprint is modeled biophysically as the fundamental high coherence informational pattern that dictates the long-term stable dynamics of the system, right? The blueprint, right? Your DNA in the cell, specifically the mitochondrial DNA, is theorized to be the fractal antenna that receives a level of resonance from the original blueprint, or has a level of contact with the physical blueprint that facilitates the feedback loop that we're talking about. Okay, so this memory provides a stable, in complex systems theory, right? This aligns with Hamiltonian memory. which describes the deterministic motion derived from projecting the evolution of the entire universe onto the dynamic variables of interest. This memory provides a stable, predictable foundation for physiological and energetic processes and everything. Okay, I think that's another way of saying that the field stores memory. You see what I'm saying? Or the blueprint can be affected. The integrity of this blueprint is constantly challenged by system fluctuations, which are often attributed to critical memory. This form of memory relates to chaotic, event-driven fluctuations that are non-integral, meaning they decay their decay is so slow that they cannot be reliably incorporated into the system's long-term deterministic state. The coexistence of these two memory types, Hamiltonian and critical, is a demonstrated reality in biological dynamics, mirroring the paradoxical nature of quantum mechanics. All right, so it's talking about advanced systems theory. What we talk about in self to others is kind of reminiscent of systems theory when we talk about structures and balance points and things of that nature. So spiritual practices are essential tools for managing this dynamic. By focusing the individual's effort, will, and establishing stable ideals, the system reduces the prevalence of chaotic, event-driven, critical memory fluctuations. This action reinforces the deterministic Hamiltonian memory, increasing the clarity, resilience, and dominance of the soul blueprint. Furthermore, spiritual health emphasizes a connection to a universal source and the fundamental law of interdependence. So, an interesting way of kind of looking at that would be when it talks about the source and all that. If life was a broadcast and the source, or God, so-called, was the source of the signal, if that makes any sense, if that kind of puts it in a different type of way. And yeah, so the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop thus serves as the mechanism by which the individual system, guided by its developed will, actively aligns its dynamics with the greater universal order, Hamiltonian dynamics, moving toward a state of higher system coherence that reflects interdependence and compassion, right? Because the way this is kind of set up, the way it's kind of talking or whatever case may be, you have a level of perfection in the blueprint and a level of imperfection in the world, and the situations that you encounter are kind of like the in-between. The world is always trying to catch up with the blueprint, thus the plethora of situations in the loop of situations that happen. So, okay, Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop component. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so this is the second part to it. Okay, so now that we got past all of the I guess the preliminary kind of seasoning the pot type stuff, this is more along the punchline. You know, I always get you the second part of the video. I always try to come through with the punchline. So, you know, if y'all wanted to fast forward through to this section, this might be the section you want to stop at. Okay, but system. Okay, part 2, system 1, solitary attainment. Okay, so this is the system of self-devoted voltage multiplication, right? So you're gonna be meditating by yourself. It's solitary spiritual practice. If you were alone in a cave for 30 years, developing your spiritual techniques or whatever case may be. So, mechanistic operation of individual coherence, solitary spiritual practice such as self-inquiry, meditation, and conscious mindfulness are fundamental systems of conscious internal biofeedback. All right. The central objective is the stabilization and optimization of the individual's bioetheric feedback loop by bringing autonomic functions, traditionally operating outside of conscious control, into internal alignment, intentional alignment, right? Basically what we're talking about, heart rate variability, coherence in the system. You're doing certain breathing exercises to modulate your heart rate and everything like that. You're doing certain exercises or whatever to kind of get you in sync, get your body in sync on certain levels, because remember, that is the baseline for establishing a higher voltage. Okay, so this process is highly relevant on sophisticated self-regulation. The primary technique of generating internal voltage is through vagal pacing and heart coherence. Remember, that's why when you read about yoga, the vagus nerve is so important, because the breathing is so important, because the breathing is a conscious way of stimulating the vagal nerve, and inducing your heart coherence and all that. Practices such as specific breathing techniques, pranayama, and sustained focused intent are utilized to intentionally modulate the high frequency component of heart rate variability, right? So it's used to adjust. You hear modulate, just think that's used to be able to adjust the frequency or whatever case may be. This modulation directly correlates with an enhancement in vagal tone, right? This adjustment in frequency into heart rate variability, it directly affects what we described earlier as vagal tone. Essentially, these techniques function as deliberate, non-invasive vagal nerve stimulation, which reduces heart rate and induces the state known as heart-brain coherence. Right? Let's read that again. This technique functions as deliberate, non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation, which reduces heart rate and induces a state known as heart-brain coherence. So breathing, basically what we're talking about, breathing techniques, pranayams and stuff like that, that affects the vagal nerve and it induces heart rate coherence. So that's the baseline for enhancing the voltage and everything like that. This high state of internal coherence is the measurable signature of increased internal voltage. The trajectory of solitary attainment is characterized by slow, steady, and cumulative growth, right? Slow, steady, and cumulative growth, like the right-hand path, like what we were talking about, like how we were talking about going to church or going to the mosque or something like that, right? Voltage multiplication is achieved not by drawing from an external source, right? No external source, no elixirs, no external people, no buildings, no nothing or whatever, just the individual themselves, but by incrementally reducing internal impedance, incrementally reducing internal resistance, right? Increased coherence, remember, equals decreased resistance, right? And maximizing the efficacy and stability of the existing biological system. The efficacy and stability of the existing biological system. So basically, it's a similar thing. Let's say like lifting weights every day. Let's say like if I have a goal or whatever case may be. Let's say my goal is I'm trying to lift 225 or something like that, or 250 or something like that. I may start out being able to only lift 95 pounds or something like that. You feel me? Or just only lift the bar or whatever case may be. Over time, as I keep doing it incrementally, going to the gym every day, working out or whatever, eating right, whatever case may be, my muscles start growing or whatever case may be, and I start working out certain muscle groups, boom, I get that 250 over a period of time or whatever. Similar thing as far as the voltage multiplication. What we talking about, see, in this vernacular, what we call a voltage multiplication and charge amplification or whatever case may be, it translates in your practical experience. It's spiritual practice, contemplation, self-reflection and everything on one side, going to church or something like that if you commune with groups of people on another side, and even the relationship between a man and a woman. You see what I'm saying? On a relationship, let's say like you married or you have a significant other or something like that, the connection that y'all have could potentially be, a spiritual type of connection or whatever case may be. Every time y'all do certain things, be intimate or whatever case may be, that enhances the voltage collectively between y'all. We're gonna get into that and everything like that. That's why when your when y'all break up, or the field collapses, or whatever case may be, you experience trauma from when the field collapses and everything like that. You get pissed at that person and everything like that because you've established an energetic connection with them. Because when you're having dealings with them, you're sending and receiving energy. We're going to get into all that. Okay, so contributing factors and internal environment. The effectiveness of solitary attainment is deeply relevant on meticulous preparation of the internal environment and the unwavering application of personal agency. So your personal will. This goes back into what we were talking about when we were going into the 48 laws of power and everything like that. Not committing or something like that. A person who doesn't commit or what have you, they have to that's a mark of independence. When you're amidst pressure from a larger group to conform or whatever, it takes a stronger act of will to be independent and unique. So and that goes back into the video Dark Night of the Soul and all that. Okay, so the power of will and ideals. Individual energetic growth requires establishing and adhering to proper ideals that furnish a stable physiological and spiritual foundation, right? This framework must be resilient, stable, and largely immune to the vicissitudes of external circumstances. So whatever goes on outside of you, it can't matter to you. You have to persevere. This is a similar thing how we were talking about selfishness or purpose. By maintaining this stable foundation, the practitioner minimizes the chaotic influence of crucial memory fluctuations, ensuring that the energetic gain achieved through the internal practices is not immediately dissipated by internal conflict and emotional volatility. That's another thing, like we were talking about infection, as far as the 48 laws of power and stuff like that. Being around people who have bad luck or bad energy or whatever case may be, negative talk or whatever case may be, it actually affects you and everything like that. So and you can, as it says right there, you can cultivate all this high voltage energy or whatever case may be, but if your environment, as we always talk about, is inappropriate for it or whatever, if your environment does not have a high voltage coherence as far as what you got going on or whatever case may be, your environment will take it right back out of you or whatever case may be, right? So it'll be a deficit. You see what I'm saying? You'll never have enough. So the will is the critical faculty that provides the power for the trajectory, enabling individual spiritual growth separate from universal cosmic consciousness, right? The will, right, is a critical faculty that provides the power for this trajectory, enabling individual spiritual growth separate from universal cosmic consciousness, right? So the temple teaching, the physical body is inseparable from the spiritual process. The temple teaching emphasizes that the management of physical health, including proper diet, exercise, and rest, is not ancillary but essential to spiritual practice. The physical vessel acts as the container and conductor for the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop. Optimized physical vitality ensures the necessary conductivity of the fascial network and maintains adequate cellular membrane potential. This relationship creates a self-reinforcing feedback loop, right? The physical, let's read that again. The physical vessel acts as a container, right, and conductor, right, for the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop. So it's a container and conductor, okay? The agent, like we've been talking about. Optimized physical vitality, your health, ensures the necessary conductivity, the fascia, remember we talked about the fascia and everything, of the fascial network, and maintains adequate cellular membrane potential, the electricity of the cell. Alkaline, like how we talked about. This relationship creates a self-reinforcing feedback loop. Improved physical health supports spiritual growth by reducing physiological impedance, resistance, and the resulting high spiritual voltage enhances physical well-being. Okay, so via negativa and via positiva, advanced solitary practices incorporate a dynamic duality exemplified by via negativa and via positiva. The via negativa involves practices of intentional emptying, silence, and stillness. This methodology serves as critical biophysical purpose, lowering the system's inherent noise floor, reducing ego impedance. By minimizing internal chaos, the system becomes highly sensitive, allowing it to accurately perceive the subtle, high-coherence signal of the source. Remember how we were saying that's the signal. If life was a broadcast, if reality is a broadcast, that's the source of the signal. Okay, or Hamiltonian pattern. Conversely, the via positiva involves practices of falling in love with existence, cultivating joy, wonder, and awe. This path provides the necessary input, energy, and energetic excitation, the equivalent of passion or high quantum yield required for the system's continuous operation and internal amplification. All right. So one involves stillness and emptying, or whatever case may be. All right. Kind of trying to reduce the resistance and everything like that. And one involves kind of like it's more of a proactive kind of mindset as far as falling in love with the existence and everything like that. One's trying to escape existence and one's trying to embrace existence, sort of. Okay, so key implications for the blueprint. Solitary practice fundamentally involves optimizing the body's internal resonance structure, the vagus nerve, and the fascial network to maximize the system's alignment with the universal source frequency. The inherent limitation is that the energy gain is capped by the individual's system's maximal capacity, right? So the amount of energy that you can receive and maintain is capped by your system, the level of cultivation of your energetic system. So the amount of work that you do on the spiritual path will suggest the amount of voltage that you're able to attain within your vessel, or the amount of spiritual attainment, or whatever case may be, right? Okay, so let's see here. However, the resulting gain is stable and independent of external field dependency. The importance of this system lies in the ability to ensure the integrity of the soul blueprint, right? Strengthening personal will and reinforcing the deterministic Hamiltonian memory of the blueprint across chaotic external fluctuations. Okay, part 3, system. Okay, this is the second system, right? So that was the individual one, right? So you're doing breath work, you're setting certain mentalities in your mind, or whatever case may be, that are conducive to more voltage or whatever, either eliminating the resistance altogether, the via negativa, or embracing the fullness of creation, or whatever, the via positiva, or whatever. Both of those increase those mentalities, increasing voltage on a particular level, on its own level, the prayer, the chanting, all that stuff like that on an individual level. So let's move away from that, and now let's go into the mass organized community ritual, collective resonance. Now let's get into collective resonance. Let's say you go to church every Sunday, or you're a member of a large congregation, or y'all do mass or something like that, whatever your religious persuasion may be. Okay, so principles of collective field synchronization and resonance. Mass organized community rituals operate based on the physics of collective synchronization. We're going to get into the coupling of fields. We talked about fields and the resonance of fields, the resonance of individual fields upon each other and everything like that. We're going to get into the coupling, capacitive coupling of multiple fields together. Okay, so their explicit role is to produce shared axes of resonance. So as you can see, it sounds bigger. You see what I'm saying? Leading to the alignment and phase locking. Remember we said if Aries was a phase as far as the 12 signs of the zodiac, locking you in Aries would be phase locking of individual bio-EM fields into a single, significantly larger coherent collective field. right? So if we lock everybody, if love was a frequency and we phase locked in the frequency of love, and it's 10,000 of us phase locked in the frequency of love, just on a hypothetical, whatever the case may be, that would be more potent than one individual kind of like embracing the via positiva like we were just talking about. So the mechanism of auditory vibrational coupling, chanting, the mechanism of auditory, because remember we said the melanin is affected by acoustic resonance, right? So the mechanism of auditory vibratory coupling, chanting. Collective practices such as communal chanting, singing, or organized prayer necessitates participants adjusting their physical output voice volume to achieve a harmonious sound structure with their neighbors, right? So we how they say, we can sing together, we can all sing together, but we can't all talk together. We can all sing at the same time, we can't all talk at the same time. Y'all heard that? Okay, so this physical harmonization of vocal cord vibration, just the physical harmonization of vocal cord vibrations alone, and synchronized breathing directly modulates, adjusts individual vagal tone. So wait a minute. So just singing in the presence of a bunch of people, all of us singing together, you see what I'm saying? Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. We singing something just as simple as that, or whatever case may be. It's initiating a level of resonance between us all breathing at the same time and everything like that. Just that increases vagal tone, what we were just talking about, all this stuff about the vagus nerve and all that stuff like that. So just that alone is powerful. Can't we all just get along in the Rodney King situation? Right. So, okay, so this modulates individual vagal tone, so in each of all the individual members, as breathing is a primary regulator of vagal activity. Remember we said that by imposing a shared rhythm, communal chanting effectively acts as external synchronized vagus stimulation, right, for the entire group. So when we do something as a collective, the entire collective benefits from it, right? As a collective group, in these group workings, going to some mass organized thing, or whatever case may be, you know. Okay, so this synchronized neurological input rapidly and uniformly lowers sympathetic nervous system impedance, resistance across all participants simultaneously. So when a bunch of people get together and they do these mass rituals, they're simultaneously affected, right? Simultaneously leading to a widespread achievement of heart-brain coherence, peace to the true and living, and the consequent formation of a massive phase-locked bio-electromagnetic field, right? Let the church say amen, right? So it creates a larger collective field is basically what it's saying. The voltage multiplication is achieved because the powerful collective field acts as a highly potent external coherent source that instantaneously feeds back into and recalibrates each individual participant's individual bioetheric feedback loop. Say that 3 times fast. Okay, so the voltage multiplication, we're going to read that one more time because I want to kind of make sure that's solidified. The voltage multiplication is achieved because the powerful collective field that's been established by all these people just speaking and singing at the same time, breathing synchronizing, which affects the vagus nerve of everybody. Field acts as a highly potent external coherent source that instantaneously feeds back to and recalibrates each participant's individual bioetheric feedback loop. So basically, that's similar to what we talked about on previous videos for numerous years at a time, how our relationship, there's a feedback loop in the relationships between people and everything like that. It's like the fluctuations in the field and everything like that. We liken the feedback or the relationship between individuals in a relationship to the pressure gradient over an electromagnetic field, so something like that. Okay, so bidirectional flow, affecting versus being affected. Functionality of group practice requires a precise balance between the two poles of resonance. The first pole, being affecting, refers to the outward projection of individual intention and energy into the collective effort. The second pole, being affected, refers to the achieving end, the openness required to absorb the amplified, right? Harmonious. Okay, it's funny because on future videos we're gonna have some conversations. We're gonna get into the whole thing about human sacrifice and all that, what it looks like through this model and everything like that, and the difference between a terrified victim energetically and an honored victim energetically, right? So stay tuned. We're gonna get into some interesting conversations as we filter several different things through this feedback loop, but neither here nor there. So the combined effect maximizes the energetic interaction, providing an individual energetic boost that often exceeds what solitary practice can generate in a short duration. So what can be generated by the participation in group workings, it can exceed in a very short amount of time. It can exceed what we just talked about, the gains that you can get from the individual workings. So that's something interesting. So amplification dynamics and the critical threshold. The strength of the collective field is not merely an additive sum of individual energies. Instead, it relies on a nonlinear exponential amplification effect predicted upon the stable measurable potential difference voltage, the stable measurable potential difference and amplitude of the bio electromagnetic field. So that's just a little sidebar. Okay, the strength of the collective field is not merely an additive sum of individual energies. Instead, it relies on a nonlinear exponential amplification effect predicted upon unified intent and devotion. Right? When the biological oscillators, the hearts and brains of each participant, right? So each person is like a node in this larger field and everything, are phase locked through physical synchronization, chanting or choreography. Dance is something else. When you see a bunch of people doing African dance or something like that, or dance in the Vedic tradition or river dancing, anything, or whatever case may be, that's a level of coherence, or whatever case may be, and you get these same type of gains from doing that. The resulting bioelectromagnetic signal amplifies exponentially. This process exhibits a critical state dynamic, the requirement for a vast and devout following, e.g. a minimum of 1,000 individuals for certain high-level rituals, demonstrate that a minimal energetic mass is necessary to overcome entropic forces and to sustain the collective field's coherence. So you need a minimum number of people to do this. Here it's listing 1,000 as the hypothetical minimum, but based on the circumstances of this experiment or whatever you may be doing, you will need a minimum number of people to overcome the forces of degradation working against the field. Right below the critical threshold, the collective Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop is unstable and incapable of self-sustaining the maximum high voltage state. So the higher the voltage, if you're doing some real high voltage stuff or whatever case may be, you may need more people of a particular quality to stabilize this whole situation or what have you, right? The failure of the collective Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop due to insufficient mass or incoherent result in a significant hazard to the participants. So if you're doing some high voltage stuff or whatever case may be, and you don't have enough people, or the quality of people will not facilitate this high voltage experiment that you're doing or whatever, you may cause harm to the people involved. So this is similar to what we were talking about, the left hand path, the traditional left hand path versus this antinomian tradition. One has governors and some sort of control structure associated with it. One does not, and one is potentially dangerous to the individuals involved, particularly the focal point of the ritual. When the massive transient field collapses, the resulting energetic dissipation generates an immediate high amplitude negative feedback surge. This catastrophic fluctuation is a magnified crucial event fluctuation. The sheer scale of the energy involved means the backlash overwhelms the individual's inherent physiological coherence, Hamiltonian memory, the blueprint, leading to a systematic breakdown of the blueprint itself, often described in esoteric literature as soul destruction. Right? Now, we're going to get into that. And as we get into the soul destruction and stuff like that, just a tad bit, nothing too crazy, because we still got one more system to explore, the dual system with you and your significant other, however that may work. Soul destruction ties into what they call the second death, or what have you. In some esoteric traditions, the first death is obvious, you see what I'm saying, the death of the body and the separation, like how we were talking about the decoupling of the field from the semiconductor. That's one form of so-called death or transformation. The second death, as it's termed in many esoteric traditions, would be where the person in the afterlife loses their memory and gets recycled, or in our example, with the stem cell, redifferentiated into a new type of cell, or put in our situation, that would be reincarnation in the transmigration of souls type deal, or whatever case may be. When they lose their memory or identity and everything like that, that would be like the second death. So soul destruction, what it's talking about here, is that instantaneously, not through the process of dying, experiencing the afterlife, and then going through the process of doing that in that way, or whatever case may be. So environmental and choreographic factors. The environment plays a key role in stabilizing the nascent collective field, right? We talked about that a lot, the environment. Rituals demand significant and symbolic components, often centered around a sacred focus, right? A sacred focus, or some principle, some collective principle that all the individuals are focused on, or whatever case may be. And normally, just as a sidebar, normally in doing workings with groups, just trying to attain goals with groups, you see what I'm saying? Staying focused on some kind of overarching theme or principle that the collective can get behind, or whatever, is really a recipe of success as far as maintaining a group together. Because what'll happen if y'all don't have some sort of collective principle that y'all can kind of get behind, whatever your tribe may be, whatever your partners are, you know what I'm saying? I feel like, you know, some of my brothers, you know what I'm saying, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, you know what I mean, everybody got something that they're good at and something that they shine at, or whatever. I think you should feel the same way about you and the people that you deal with, or whatever. You and your people should be the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, or League of Extraordinary Sistering, or however it may go, you know what I'm saying, to get problem solved, put your heads together, you know what I'm saying, come up with some sort of collective resonance. So, yeah, just kind of, you know, but focusing on some sort of overarching principle, because what's going to happen if you're not focused on the overarching principle, when one of the individuals in the group starts shining, or whatever case may be, you're going to have that Samuel Jackson from Django moment, you know what I'm saying, who that think he is on that nag, who he think he is, you know what I'm saying, you're going to have a who he think he is moment. But like I said, I believe at the beginning of this video, or whatever, all of us represent a community. So anything intellectual, let's say any of us have to provide or contribute, a lot of times we represent a community and everything like that, or we represent a common idea that all of us can get behind. And my contribution or your contribution can be contributed because we contribute to the collective, or whatever. It's an act of resonance. All is going to eat off of that. All is going to benefit off of what any of us bring to the table intellectually, as it can be seen with a lot of these videos. I'm piecing together work from all over the place, you see what I'm saying, to come to these conclusions. I'm standing on the shoulders of many as it pertains to this. That was my in-video rant. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. So, let's get into this. Let's see. Now, we were talking about the field collapse. Okay, before we go into this section 3 with this dual system, before we go into the dual system, I want to address this. Okay, so One second here. I want to address this. Okay, so how would you dissolve the field without a negative field collapse effect in a mass multi-person ritual, right? So the cessation of a collective ritual field without negative consequences. So this is how you dissolve the field without negative consequences. Okay, a cessation of a collective ritual field without negative consequences requires the intentional reintegration of the massive phase-locked energy. You see what I'm saying? That we focusing on one particular theme, like I just described, the massive phase-locked energy. We're phase-locked on one theme, not a person, but a theme. You see what I'm saying? If you focusing on a person, you're going to be disappointed in that person in some way, or you're going to find fault in that person. We're not dealing with a person. We're dealing with a theme that everybody can get behind. Okay, so phase-locked energy, preventing a sudden entropic collapse within the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop model. This process is achieved by systematically reversing the positive feedback loop responsible for the voltage amplification, right? Reversing the positive feedback loop, ensuring the field dissipates coherently back into the individual systems of the individual pieces, the individual people involved in the ritual, and the universal ether at large. This intentional coherent decoupling focuses on minimizing the energetic impedance resistance during the shutdown phase, a critical challenge because the ritual structure is designed for maximum power and minimal stability, right, in certain scenarios. Okay, the hazard, catastrophic energy collapse, soul destruction, what we just talked about, that's a hazard of, the field shutting down or whatever case may be. As it pertains to the soul, can't be destroyed, can't die, or whatever case may be, as it pertains to energy or whatever case may be. But this hypothetically is a way of it losing its identity, severely damaging the blueprint according to this model. The hazard, catastrophic energetic collapse, soul destruction. The danger in a high voltage mass ritual arises from an inherent physics. The system operates as an amplified, unstable, positive feedback loop mechanism of destruction. When the ritual field fails to sustain its coherence due to lack of critical mass or united intent, the field collapses. This immediate dissipation generates a massive non-integrable energetic fluctuation, a magnified critical event fluctuation. The effect, this chaotic high amplitude negative feedback surge overwhelms the individual Bio Aetheric feedback loop regulatory capacity, the vagus nerve resistance control. It overwhelms that control mechanism between the dantians, as we said, those nerve centers, and the gut, the heart, and the brain. It floods the system with chaos, leading to the annihilation of the individual's stable soul blueprint, Hamiltonian memory, which is the definition of destruction in this context, soul destruction in this context. Okay, a strategy for controlled de-amplification, slowing the positive loop to avoid catastrophic nonlinear collapse. A positive feedback loop must be intentionally slowed and guided back to stable zero resilience state. You see what I'm saying? So like they'll have a benediction in a church service. You see what I'm saying? Where we pray in and we pray out and all that stuff like that or whatever. That's this type of thing right here. You kind of redistributing the energy back to the individual participants. All hearts and minds are clear, right? You dig that? So a phase synchronization decay reverse choreography mass ritual achieve high voltage through the physical and neurological synchronization of participants, chanting synchronized movement, which phase locks individuals bio EM fields. Okay, let's see. Systematic voltage stepping. The energy potential or pressure in the system must be systematically drawn down by focusing the amassed charge into a stable component. Action. The final energy of collective field must be channeled deliberately into pre-existing sacred focus. The theme as an external resonator or tuning device, or directed back into the universal ether via the original connection point, saying a prayer at the end of the proceedings or whatever, directing it back to some sort of universal principle or whatever principle that binds us all together or what have you. This don't sound like nothing. When we're talking about having a church service and then having a benediction or saying the prayer to start us off or whatever case may be, you see, all that don't sound like nothing. These are just things that people just do. But as modern people, we just do things. But ancient people, as we know, or people who came up with all this stuff, there was a rhyme and a reason behind it. As we can see, it's energetically sound. It's a reason why they did that. You got a benediction, you pray in, you pray out, you do this in the middle, you sing together, you pray together, all that stuff like that. This is the science behind what you're actually doing and the reason why. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so individual reintegration, the safety of the dissolution phase relies on maximizing the impedance regulations of each individual bioetheric feedback loop so they can safely absorb the final non-coherent residue of the collapsing field. Active vagus tonus enhancement. Each participant must conclude the ritual by engaging their internal impedance regulator, the vagus nerve. Action, as the collective choreography slows, the participants must consciously engage in slow, deep diaphragmatic breathing, the cool down. You see what I'm saying? This acts as a deliberate, non-invasive vagus nerve stimulation, instantly elevating the individual's vagus tone effect. The enhanced vagus tone boosts the individual's resistance to stress and systematic fluctuations. This creates a neurological shock absorber, allowing the individual's system to safely process the residual chaotic energy of dissipating collective field without suffering a catastrophic collapse of their own soul blueprint. Another shock absorber, interestingly enough, would be comedy or laughing. If you're trying to absorb some very stimulating information or some very detailed or some very dense information or what have you, or some very shocking information or what have you, constantly mixing it in with comedy, you see what I'm saying? So it'll offset some of the shock of that. Comedy kind of acts as that type of thing as well. Okay, so let's kind of go back. Okay, so we just wanted to, the concept of soul destruction, let me see, in many esoteric traditions, soul destruction is related to the concept of annihilation or the second death. This is often presented in the direct contrast to the belief in the eternal life or immortality, suggesting that the fate of the unworthy is to be totally destroyed and their consciousness extinguished. From the philosophical perspective, the soul and mind is said to be destroyed when its essential powers, such as awareness, perception, and memory, gradually attenuate until the degree of consciousness effectively decreases to zero, resulting in annihilation. Soul destruction at an individual level. In the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop model, the soul blueprint is the Hamiltonian memory, the high-coherence deterministic informational pattern that provides the stable foundation for the individual's existence and purpose, their form and function. Individual soul destruction is the internal collapse of the bioetheric feedback loop's regulatory capacity, where the chaotic energetic inputs overwhelm the stable blueprint, overwhelming crucial memory, and it goes into that. It goes into all that. So we want to get into this last piece, right? So this is the dual section. This is the dual, right? So this is the dual aspect of it, right? So dual systems such as advanced tantric practices, like what we talked about in previous video, involving the sexual act, utilizes the maximal achievable physical and energetic proximity between two individuals to achieve the highest potential efficacy in voltage multiplication, right? So it's getting the maximum proximity between two individuals, because they actually, in the case for male and female, they actually connecting bodies and stuff like that. So this phenomenon is, well, y'all know what I mean, because I ain't gonna rehash that. Okay, so this phenomenon is best modulated using the physics of non-radiative energy transfer. Non-radiative energy transfer, they're actually touching. So modeling via Foster's resonance energy transfer, FRET. Foster's resonance energy transfer provides the optimal biophysical framework for understanding high efficacy coupling Foster's resonant energy transfer describes the non-radiative transfer of energy from an excited molecule, the donor, to a nearby molecule, the acceptor, via a long-range dipole coupling mechanism. Now we're going to get into that on another one of our videos in regards to Tantra and everything like that. We get into the difference between men and women in this context. Men and women are not the same. Okay, so when we get into Tantra, men and women are not the same. The body of a man is different. The body of a woman is different. What a man is capable of and what a woman are capable of on this level energetically are two totally different things. A man is the transmitter modulator. You see what I'm saying? In the context, you see what I'm saying? He's a transmitting entity. The woman is a battery. You see what I'm saying? A capacitor. She receives and everything like that. After receiving so much, her capacity can be almost filled up where it's hard for her to receive more. It's harder for her to receive new energy and connect. You see what I'm saying? We call it peer bonding and on a chemical level and everything like that. So we get into that in other videos. That's why in Tantra, they're not, if you go back into the works of, I know one of the tantric teachers that, you know, I explored a few of his works, Sunyata Saraswati. He talks about the difference between friction sex and tantric sex as far as using the woman's body as a battery, because a woman never exhausts her ability to have orgasms. If you get into Mantak Chia, some of his stuff, the multi-orgasmic woman and all that stuff like that, you get into all that. Mantak Chia, he goes into that, how the woman's body is a battery and stuff like that. She never exhausts the ability to orgasm and stuff like that. And the sex is kind of centered around the idea her body is a battery, and you're dealing with a circuit of energy, and you're amplifying the collective using that particular circuit of energy. I mean, you have to go down that whole rabbit hole yourself to kind of see the energetic aspect of it. But men and women are totally different in that context. You see what I'm saying? So, all right, this model is typically applied to molecular interactions, but its principles scale effectively to biofield interactions occurring during intimate coupling. The spiritual practitioner is a high voltage state. The spiritual practitioner in a high voltage state acts as an excited donor system. Critical dependency on proximity, right? Mathematical expression, touching people. Mathematical expressions for the Foster resonance energy transfer efficacy demonstrates a critical nonlinear dependency on distance. E is inversely proportional to the 6th power of the distance, given a formula and all that, separating the donor and the acceptor. This D6 dependency is critical. FRET efficacy is maximized at the Foster distance, which typically ranges between 3 and 7 nanometers for common FRET pairs. The intentional physical and energetic proximity achieved during advanced dual practice, specifically sexual union, approximates this maximal molecular and cellular proximity. Even marginal increases in proximity yield exponential increases in energy transfer efficacy. So basically, I think just touching somebody or standing in proximity to somebody elicits some manner of energy transfer. We've already talked about just having a relationship with somebody, whether it be intimate or otherwise, it still facilitates a measure of energy transfer. If you think about somebody, you know, you might think about them and they call you or something like that, and you might be miles and miles away. So that, you know, this is more of the tactile version of that, making this system capable of achieving immediate nonlinear voltage multiplication, optimizing voltage multiplication via coupling. Achieving high efficacy transfer requires more than mere proximity. It demands meticulous, energetic, and physiological alignment, right? A second critical determinant of FRET efficacy is the K2 factor, which represents the relative orientation between the emission dipole and the donor and the absorption dipole and acceptor. Okay, let's see here. The role of heightened physiological states. The intense physiological engagement inherent in the practice, synchronized respiration. They're talking about intercourse. Synchronized respiration, heightened cardiac output, release of neurochemicals, deep emotional connection creates a stable. Okay, so all of this is the hallmark of not just intercourse, but a relationship. You see what I'm saying? So this is what happens energetically when you get in a relationship with someone. You get your nose get open, as the old people used to say. The intense physiological engagement inherent in the practice, synchronized respiration, heightened cardiac output, release of neurochemicals, deep emotional connection creates a state of extreme energetic excitation in both partners. This state provides a high quantum yield for the donor, further priming the systems for maximal fret transfer and efficient energy acceptance. Furthermore, the proximity allows the specialized conducting structures of the body, the fascial network, to effectively merge, allowing for exceptionally rapid, low impedance, low resistance, charge transport, and potential equalization across the combined dual system. So basically, you're exchanging energy with somebody, and overall, that exchange of energy is a way of multiplying the voltage across y'all as a collective. So being in a relationship with somebody and actually, how can I really say, y'all actually being in sync and kind of like actually liking each other. You ain't with the dude because you trying to get some money, and you ain't just with her because she got a big budget, but you don't really like her, so whatever the case may be, or you holding out to something better come along. Y'all are actually into each other, right? Because that's a part of this whole energetic thing, how you feel about the person. It's a reflection of how you feel about yourself. All of that all of that stuff, or whatever the case may be, that has a potential. Y'all relationship in general has a potential to increase the voltage in both of you all. You see what I'm saying? Food for thought. Creation of a transient, amplified union field. The result interaction generates a high potential, ephemeral energy structure referred to as a transient union field. It's between two people because the energy is efficient, transferred, and recycling between two highly aligned, highly potential systems. The result is voltage multiplication rather than the simple addition. The amplitude of the union field can momentarily surpass the voltage retention capacity of either individual system operating in isolation. All right. Okay. So when you put two people together in this context, and they're doing what they're doing in order to, for the sake of voltage multiplication and everything like that, it's greater than what one individual person could attain by himself. The energy delivered within the dual system is highly focused and intentional. Unlike the diffuse energy distribution of a mass ritual. So the energy delivered within the dual system is highly focused and intentional, right? The two people system. This is contrast between the two people system and the multi-people system, right? The mass system. Unlike the diffuse energy distribution of a mass ritual, it's a lot of energy, but it's being diffused over a lot of people. Thus, this concentrated multiplied voltage can be utilized for targeted energetic operations. Okay, so you can do it in a more targeted way. These are the pros and cons to this. It's a little bit less energy, but it's more focused and it can be more directed because it's two people or whatever case may be. It provides a radical and powerful influx of coherent energy designed to accelerate the refinement and transformation of the soul blueprint, right? So you and your significant other, you know what I'm saying, if y'all sync up, y'all get in sync or whatever case may be, you ain't necessarily got to do no particular kind of ritual or nothing like that if that's not your bag, but just kind of getting in tune with your partner or whatever case may be. You know, those little romantic situations that y'all find yourselves in or whatever case may be when y'all kind of enjoying each other's company or whatever, that's a form of kind of strengthening this bond or whatever and increasing that voltage or whatever. Rapidly dissolving old low coherence patterns, critical memory through swift energetic overhaul. The implications of this exponential potential is a corresponding extreme volatility due to the severe D6 dependency. Any minimal increase in physical distance, or more critically, loss of energetic emotional alignment. So this is what happens when y'all break up. Loss of energetic emotional alignment, dipole misalignment, represented by poor K2, results in a rapid and near total collapse of the transfer efficiency. So, okay, so when y'all fall out, it's like a field collapse, or the ability to transfer energy between the two of y'all kind of falls apart. Okay, this makes the dual system the highest risk method of voltage attainment. This is why, because I guess when the field collapses between two people or whatever, due to the fact it's a more concentrated interaction, it stands to hurt a little bit more than it would if the field collapses between a bunch of people or whatever case may be. It's the most risky method for voltage attainment, vulnerable to rapid destabilization and potential energetic parasitism. And in a whole nother video, we're going to go over the incubus and the succubus. We're going to get into the energetic vampirism and all that. If one partner's system operates at a significantly lower coherence level or attempts to drain the other. So, okay, that's another thing about this. If you're doing a two-person situation or whatever case may be, y'all have to be equally yoked. The other person has a potential, if they have a low level of coherence, low self-esteem, low energy level, or whatever case may be, they have the potential to drain the person with the higher level of coherence. It's not a money thing, it's a coherence thing. You see what I'm saying? Because you can have you can have a bunch of money and be a drug addict or alcoholic or something like that, and you could be with a person who's like a waitress or something like that. She don't really make a whole lot of money, but she's kind of like in tune with her emotions or whatever, and you destroying this person's life. So, and that's just on a hypothetical. Okay, so comparative analysis and energetic effects. Comparative efficacy of voltage gain. The three systems present distinct approaches to voltage gain, each optimized for different energetic outcomes. Solitary attainment, characterized by slow, incremental, and highly repeatable voltage accumulation. The maximum attainable gain is limited by the intrinsic constraints of the individual system. So it's limited by the fact that it's one person. The focus is on internal coherence and the stability of the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop. Okay, and group rituals, right? Capable of generating high episodic bursts of voltage. The gain is nonlinear and proportional to the collective mass, but it is highly volatile. Efficacy is determined entirely by homogeneity of intent, them focusing on a common goal or common principle, and the maintenance of the critical mass threshold. The focus is on capturing external resonance, right? Okay, so the third one, dual systems such as Tantra offer exponential potential for multiplication, voltage multiplication in the human visual. The gain rate is the fastest of the three, right? Of all three of these, the gain rate of the dual is the fastest of the three, because though it has less people, it's not limited by it just being one person. It's two people involved, so it's more than one biofield comes as a collective and everything like that. But it can be more focused and well structured and controlled versus a group. It's a lot of energy, but it's spread over multiple people, and the more people involved, the more potential for something to go wrong. So okay, so let's see here. The gain rate is the fastest of the three. Efficacy is acutely dependent upon geometric factors, maximal proximity, and precise dipole alignment. So analysis of the risk and sustainability and impedance. Solitary system, okay, slow and steady, limitations plateauing due to individual limits. Okay, group rituals, requirement of a critical mass, a certain number of individuals. In the dual system, extreme reliance on the partner's energetic alignment. So if you and your partner ain't in sync, if you and your partner ain't seeing eye to eye, the dual system may have an issue. Okay, mechanics of connection from nerve to field. The method of which the human voltage is multiplied or amplified is dictated by the mode of connection. Solitary connection achieved internally through the vagus nerve, which regulates the physiological relationship between the heart and the brain, optimizing inherent coherence. Group connection achieved externally through EM field synchronization, driven by the collective auditory and respiratory modulation, establishing phase-locked coherence across the shared field. The big shared field, if it's 1,000 people, whatever. Okay, dual connection, achieved systematically via molecular proximity and dipole coupling, primarily utilizing the combined fascial network, two bodies, as a rapid conduction medium to facilitate field resonance, the fret like energy transfer. Let's see what's going on in the body. Across all three systems, the underlying physiological mechanism for voltage elevation involves practices that consciously drive the biological system toward optimal coherence and maximum efficiency. This includes reducing system impedance through stress attenuation, significantly lowering levels of stress hormones, cortisol, vagal toning, optimizing the heart rate variability, stabilizing cardiac rhythm and parasympathetic dominance, fascial restructuring, releasing energetic somatic trauma stored in the fascial network. Okay. We toward the end. Ultimately, the ultimate long-term effect of the successful spiritual practice across all three systems is the enhancement of the stability, integrity, and coherence of the soul blueprint. That's the long-term effect of either one of these, modeled as Hamiltonian memory by increasing the system's baseline voltage potential. The individual Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop becomes inherently more resilient to destabilizing external influences and internal chaotic events. Okay, so the system becomes stronger because the system has to continuously facilitate this influx of high voltage energy, so the system becomes stronger. Okay, so the solitary effect. The path primarily reinforces the personal foundation, will, and autonomy, leading to deep self-trust and recognition of the individual's infinite nature, right? The group effect, the sudden influx of high coherence collective energy, provides an energetic recalibration, expanding the blueprint to incorporate the universal habit of interdependence. So this is the group effect, right? So this system, okay, now the dual effect, this system induces radical and accelerated transformation between two people we're talking about. So this whole gender war that they got, that they fabricated over years and years of think tanks and funding and stuff like that. Somebody paid for this. So this whole gender war that they got going on, or whatever case may be. Okay, so imagine if men and women had to come together on some sort of energetic level in order to evolve in some sort of way. Imagine that. Imagine we would really be in trouble, because look at what's been fabricated. So, you know what I'm saying? Okay, the highly focused multiplied voltage stream provides the necessary energy for rapidly dismantle established low coherent structured patterns within the blueprint. So you can, that's another way to kind of grow the blueprint. All right. Based on the biophysical analysis of the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, specific strategies can optimize the efficacy and safety of the energetic attainment. Let's see, physical tuning and vagus management. Okay, the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop, in conclusion, model provides an underlying biophysical framework that translates esoteric concepts and spiritual attainment into measurable dynamics of coherence, resonance, and frequency transfer. The analysis demonstrates that the voltage multiplication is not mystical. It's not mystical, but a predictable result of minimizing system resistance, impedance, ego, fascial, while maximizing coupling efficacy, vagal tone, fret factors. All right. The choice of attainment system dictates the energetic risk and reward. Solitary practices ensure the highest stability and personal integrity. Group rituals offer high potential collective expansion, but are subject to critical state volatility. And dual systems provide the fastest path to accelerated transformation, but carry inherent high risk associated with nonlinear proximity dependent coupling dynamics. Your relationship, if you can't maintain a relationship with another individual, or whatever case may be, then that's dead in the water. Okay, so ultimately the goal of spiritual development viewed through the Bio Aetheric Feedback Loop model is the continuous integration of individual consciousness into the stable high coherence patterns of Hamiltonian memory, the blueprint. This alignment ensures that the output of the fully realized soul blueprint is the deterministic manifestation of universal interdependence, compassion, and justice. So just in that whole model, pretty much, regardless of what your religious persuasion is, we pretty much explain the whole purpose of spiritual practice, period, regardless of what you believe in. It's really something that's affecting, your connection with the blueprint or the soul and everything like that. And it's, which is an electrical phenomena, as we've talked about in this. And your spiritual practice is voltage multiplication. It's charge enhancement or amplification or whatever case may be. For you, it's establishing a clarity of signal. So when you finally get to the phase of decoupling from the semiconductor or the body or the battery and everything like that, you have a strong transmission or whatever case may be out of here or whatever. So that's pretty much all I had. I know that was a bit lengthy, but I was just trying to make sure we covered all our bases. And that's a bit lengthy, about 2 hours almost. But I appreciate y'all for checking me out. Catch y'all again on the next one. Peace.